You're listening to the Midlife Ripening Podcast. I'm your host and your trusted midlife midwife, Brooke Hofstess. This is a space for real talk, soul talk, about living a life that's fully, finally yours. We're here for the second bite, the luscious, conscious one, the one you take not because you're supposed to or expected to, but because something inside you says, this is mine to savor. You've built the life, the career, held the family, the calendar, the entire ecosystem of care. And yet something deeper is stirring, a want, a whisper, a truth you're ready to name. Here we'll explore creativity, rest, desire, play, rooted confidence, and the holy audacity of being yourself. If you've outgrown the life that once made sense and you're listening for what's next, come closer. Midlife isn't a crisis, it's a coming home. Let's slow down, feel our way in, and begin again. Welcome back to the podcast. I am beyond delighted to have a really special and honored guest with me today, Joanna Lindenbaum, who I found at the beginning of my coaching journey and was drawn to the way that Joanna answered the call to bring the coaching industry into higher standards of ethics and integrity and depth and transformation and mastery. And as a longstanding mentor and guide for not just my coaching, but also my evolution, I am just so honored to have you here as a guest, Joanna.
I'm so honored to be here. I was very excited when you invited me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to, before we get into our conversation, just really start with you and offer you the opportunity just to tell us how you want to be known in this conversation, what feels important to share to people who might be new to your world.
Yeah, great question. Well, first of all, thank you for that introduction. It took everything you said into my heart. I think you said a lot of it professionally. My mission is really to train practitioners, coaches, therapists to be able to go deeper in their client work and to do it in ways that are ethical. I'd say my stealth mission in everything that I do beyond training is to really support the practitioners that I train to reclaim all the parts of themselves, the pretty ones, the not so pretty ones, all the places that culture has told us is not okay or not acceptable or that we should be ashamed of. Um, and it's important to me, not only for the personal transformation of the practitioners that I train, but because these are the leaders that are going out in the world and the ripple effect on all of that. So, yeah, I'd say in answer to your question of how I want to be known as someone who just fiercely stands up for reclamation of those parts.
Mhm. I'm really just soaking that in because I felt that as a learner in your spaces. And I think it's one of the reasons why I kind of fell in love with coaching as a possibility for women specifically, that there's so much pressure to, get our shit together and present a certain way in the world. And so coming into your spaces and maybe for the first time, really fully honoring all that I was bringing to the conversation. And I'm even remembering one session in particular where when we first started working together, I couldn't even say the word brilliance in the context of my own gifts.
I remember
You
that.
remember
Yeah,
that?
I do. I do.
And so I feel like that's a big part of this too, right? Because some of the places that are hard to own aren't even, maybe our jealousy or our anger, but like even our own brilliance and intelligence and heart sometimes.
Yeah. It's so true. And what you say about it relating particularly to women, I think is absolute truth.
Could you talk a little bit more about reclamation and midlife from your personal experience or what you've seen in the coaching industry?
Absolutely. And I feel like midlife has been a portal for me personally to reclaim more of who I am. I think I spent the first half of my life giving lip service, maybe, to this idea that I should love all the parts of myself, that I should own who I am. But it wasn't really until the last 7, 8 years that that kind of it went in deeper inside of me where I
Mm.
got it in a different kind of way. And I think that, it relates to midlife for so many different reasons. One, I think, is just the fact of mortality. At least for me, I'm a deep thinker, a dark thinker.
Mhm.
And I'm really conscious that I'm halfway through my life or more than halfway through my life and that time is precious. And it's really this question for me of how am I going to spend that time? And am I going to spend it in a way where I am loving myself and not just loving the parts that culture has told me is okay, like my degrees and my accomplishments and my, I don't know, being smart, however you want to say that, or how much money I've made. But also, am I going to spend that time loving my messiness and my imperfections and the things about me that are different? So I think that's been a really, really big factor in the reclamation piece for me in midlife time.
Time. I read the other day, Joanna, that midlife for women can begin as soon as 38 years old. And I wondered when I read that if we even have kind of the cultural conversation at that point, in our mid to late 30s. That's definitely when I first started feeling the shift. I became a mother. That was a real reckoning and wake up call in terms of how I wanted to show up for her and for myself and some of the things that I was absolutely done with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Agree.
Mhm.
I think I probably started feeling it around 37, 38, but not as I'm going to be 50 this summer. And I feel like it's increased each year for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, I've been feeling that too. And one of the words that comes up for me in listening to what you just shared is like this embodied acceptance. It's not just staying in the worry or the fear over the mortality, but it's like using that as fuel or almost like alchemy to come into deeper layers of acceptance that maybe we knew about cognitively. We wanted to have that kind self talk, but it's like actually being that for ourselves every single day.
Agree. And that acceptance piece that you're speaking about, what I find for myself and so many women that I work with, it becomes easier too in midlife because there is possibly a caring less about what other people think
Yeah.
also.
Mhm.
Which I'm still in the process of that. I just want to say no myth of perfection here. I still do care a lot in times what other people think. But that being said, I'm really finding that what I used to think is the impossible, but how that's always going to count so much. And what I'm finding is that actually because of the timepiece we're talking about. And it's like I'm weighing what am I going to make more important here? Me, who I am, accepting all of who I am, embracing it, or worrying all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean I've spent many years worrying all the time of what people think about me. Do they like me? Am I acceptable? My mother recently passed away, and I've been reflecting a lot on her and things that she has taught me in my life. And my mother always had this saying, we're Jewish, and she always had the saying of kiss my tuchus. Basically, is kiss my ass. And I remember through my teens and my 20s and even most of my 30s, anytime she'd say it, my reaction would be a combo of disgust and awe. Like, like disgust. How could she just not care? And also awe, like, oh my gosh, how could she not care? And over the last 3, 4, 5 years, the kiss my toughest has become one of my like my deep mantras, just coming back and reminding myself of that belief, that feeling, that attitude of I get to be me, and you can think whatever you about that.
Yes, I love that. I feel like one of the portals that opened for me with coaching was the phrase, "Let me disappoint you." I found this
Yeah.
phrase in a self-help book in a used bookstore, and it was the same thing. It was horrifying and it was liberating at the same time of like, "Oh, wow, that could actually be a way of being."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's permission to do that.
Mhm.
Am I going to disappoint you, or am I going to disappoint myself?
S Mhm. I'm curious, I think sometimes there can be a cultural narrative that midlife is a time of slowing down, or even like we can have thoughts like it's too late for me. If I really wanted that, wouldn't I have already done that? And just in your experience, your depth of experience in the transformational industry, why would midlife be kind of a perfect time actually to not wait?
Yeah, I love this question. So, and I want to also say, think it's a both and, because it's a beautiful thing to slow down
Mm.
too. In some ways, I'm speeding up, and in some ways, I'm slowing down. But I, as you know, I'm a student of the seasons and the rhythms, and this time of midlife is akin to the autumn, which is very much about the harvest time and very much about being in your power. And for those of us that are with women's ritual and following the seasons, this archetype of the autumn, it is the queen. She's the one who has moved through the maiden phase of being young and curious and kind of going in maybe lots of different directions with curiosity. And she's moved through the phase of the mother, whether you've had children or not, but giving so much of that life force energy to nurturing someone else. And of course, I'm still in the mother phase too. My kids are still at home. It's not that I'm not still mothering and nurturing others. But when we reach midlife, somewhere in our 40s and our 50s, we also get to claim this energy of the queen. And the queen, she's the one who sits on her throne, the throne that's not higher than others. There's power with, but that throne is powerful. She has lived life. She's gained experience and wisdom and skills. She no longer has to care so much what others think. And so, because of that, she can do good in the world as
Mhm.
queens do. They support others in various different ways to find their own power. They help change the world. It's not that when we're younger, we can't help change the world, but when we're in midlife, we're uniquely positioned to gather and harvest all of the lessons and experiences that we've already experienced and taken in, and to bring it out into the world.
Mm. That's such a rich metaphor. And I'm just so struck, like, if we haven't come into that place of acceptance that we were talking about earlier, I don't know that the power with is really possible when we reach that level of sovereignty.
Absolutely. So, I mean, so much to say on that, but what I will say for now is that when we haven't claimed our own power, which is part of that acceptance,
Mhm.
we're not in right relationship with power.
Mhm.
And then we tend to either let others take advantage of us, or not, we don't show up to the plate, or we find these ways to take power over that aren't aligned either.
Mm.
So it is like that, accepting all of who we are. It helps bring us into right relationship with power.
Mm. And the other thing that I kind of want to tease out from that beautiful autumn metaphor, Joanna, is this idea that the throne is a place of service and doing good and making the world better. And I think that there can be a little bit of a story sometimes when it comes to women seeking support for their inner life, that it's self-indulgent or there will be time for it later. But I'm in my work, I really connect the inner work to the collective work. And I really believe in the ripples that happen from being interested in our own lives. And, coming into that sense of wholeness that allows you to sit in your seat with all of you there.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, it can't be said enough. Even if we've done a lot of inner work, like I have, like I know you have, like so many of my clients have, and I'm guessing yours as well. There's more to be done.
Mhm.
I don't ever think the inner inquiry is a once and done, or we've arrived. And in fact, in order to sit on the throne and be in that place of power with, we need to continue to do our own inner work. It needs to be both maintained and also find the layers of it.
Mhm. Which really goes back to the seasons and why I think that's such a powerful framework for transformation and for coaching, right? That I remember hearing you talk about Montessori classrooms and, kind of experiencing the same curriculum several years in a row with different individuals around you, learning in community. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah, we're coming back in that upward spiral. As we're talking, there's one other thing I want to toss out around this queen piece that I think might be helpful for some people listening, which is in kind of like traditional women's, I don't know, wisdom and circles. For the longest time, there were only three archetypes of women. There was maiden that I mentioned, mother that I mentioned, and then it skipped over queen and it went straight to crone. So when you were done with your mothering, nurturing time, you were an old lady. And you got to claim like the wisdom of being old and being close to death and all of that. But there actually wasn't an archetype for midlife. And it wasn't until I think the 80s, this incredible woman named Donna Hennis, who said, hey, there's something wrong here with this maiden mother crone. What about women in midlife? And she is the one who coined this term for midlife in women and built out this kind of the profile of the archetype. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is it goes to your question that you asked earlier of, well, okay, we already reached this age. So is there anything more for us to do, or should we just be
Mm,
slowing down? And I think part of that is cultural, even within women's empowerment tradition, because the patriarchal messages have been so strong over millennia. It actually wasn't until recently, like in the last decades, that there was more of this awareness of, no, women are actually in their power in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And so this is because of longevity of life now and all of that, but that there's actually so much for us to do
mm,
and so much for us to bring up and out into the world because of our experiences with wisdom during this time of life.
mm. Oh, it's so interesting. And I think what it stirs up for me, sometimes when I think about fall, I think about the shedding or the release,
Yeah.
but there's also the really beautiful show that fall puts on, the color and, like you said, the harvest. And that's the piece that I'm really hearing when you're describing this archetype is like, yeah, let's not rush over that part. Yes, let's release and let's let go and care a little bit less about what other people think, but also be in the beauty and the glory of everything that you've earned, all of that lived experience and hard won wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Those rich colors, so different from the beautiful spring colors, but they're pastel. They're not as layered. They don't bring that deeper kind of meaning.
Mhm.
And and then, yeah, some of autumn, like you say, is about falling away. But a lot of autumn is about plucking those fruits from
Mhm.
the trees that you've grown and you've tended to and you've nurtured to actually both be able to enjoy them for yourself and to give to the world.
Beautifully said. Joanna, when I think of you, I think of a storyteller. And I'm wondering if you have a story or a myth or a parable that relates in some way for you to what we've been talking about.
Great question. It's not a myth or a story or a parable. Well, it's a story, but it's more of a personal story. So maybe not
Mhm.
as
Yeah,
archetypal as what you were asking for,
that's great.
but maybe it'll be resonant. And especially since we're talking about the seasons. Before I started coaching, I led women's circles and rituals. Um, around the moons and the cycles and the wheel of the year. And I had a business partner, this woman named Dawn. We were great creative partners. We led these rituals together. And I showed up for every ritual. We would plan these rituals and then come and co-facilitate. But every year there was one ritual that somehow I got sick for, or I didn't,
Mm,
even though I'm not a flake, I just didn't feel like going, or something else would come up. And it would be the ceremony on August 1st
mm,
that connotes the first harvest festival,
mm,
Llamas. And this whole ceremony, every year we would create it, would be about taking in the harvest, enjoying it,
mm,
learning how to really honor and celebrate your accomplishment.
mm.
So, anyway, this went on for 2 or 3 years. I would somehow flake out each time until Dawn, my partner, finally said, "Hey, don't you think you should take a look at what's going on with you here?" And I could see it right away. I What I'll say is, but I couldn't fully take it in. I saw, oh, I'm not really harvesting. And I was doing some celebrations in my life, some appreciation in my life, but I couldn't fully take it in. until the last, and that was in my early 30s. That being said, over the last, I don't know, 4 years, this something has really shifted inside of
Mm.
me with this. And I do think it is so much to do with midlife. Whereas before, I'm a very ambitious person. So much has been about what am I going to create? What am I going to accomplish? What am I going to do next? In all the beauty and also the maybe wounding that goes along with it. And now, even though there's still so much I want to create and accomplish, the harvest has hit me in a different way. And instead of accomplishment being my top priority now is savoring, presence, pleasure, taking in the goodness of what I have already created.
Mm.
So instead of creating for the glory of it, for the ego of it, and I think there's a place for that in life. I'm not knocking that. For me now, as I do create, it's about how can I enjoy this as I am creating it? How can I bring more pleasure to this moment? How can I be in gratitude for all that there already is? It's a different way of creating.
It's a completely different model.
Yeah, agree.
That lands so powerfully for me. It's like, it's not bad or wrong to want to create and achieve and build and bring that harvest to fruition. And yet, can we do it from a different place?
Exactly. Exactly. And I could be so wrong about what I'm about to say. I don't know. But I actually don't think I could have done it in that way in my 30s because it was a different phase of life. I really feel like a big piece. Yes, for me, it's about lessons learned. Of course, that's how we shift and transform. But I also think some of it is about the energy of midlife that is allowing me to make it a priority to savor, to harvest, to be in gratitude, to take in pleasure in this kind of way as I.
Yeah. That resonates with me. And in fact, I was having a very similar thought as you were sharing. I don't know that that was accessible to me in the framework I was operating in when I was in my 30s because the energetics of it were just really different. It was more about maybe establishing security or improving myself or,
Yes.
going back to likability. I was literally building a reputation in my field. And now it has shifted. It's only possible to move into creating from a place of potential and pleasure when we stop and celebrate the harvest, right?
Yeah,
Like it feels like that's maybe sort of the foundational piece.
I would agree. And yes to everything that you said, that kind of 20s, 30s, building security, worrying about what other people think, and having something to prove, which also is not always a bad thing. I always had something to prove, not just to other people, but to myself, right? Like to prove I can get this done. I can make this happen. I can accomplish this.
Mhm,
Um, but the sitting on the throne now is like, I don't have to prove it to myself
mhm.
anymore.
Yeah.
So then there's freedom for other types of experiences and creation.
Mhm. So beautifully said. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. And I'm curious if you would be up for leaving listeners with a seed. It could be a question or a practice or just something that you wanted to say that you haven't got to say yet in our conversation.
Yeah, I'll ask a question that's very much related to a phrase that's been so much with me as I've been moving through midlife, especially lately, which is how am I going to make it count? So, whatever meaning that has for each person listening, but how am I going to make it count?
Mm, what a gorgeous question. Joanna, every time we are in this space together, I'm just so appreciative and moved by the nuance and the mastery and the quality of your listening and your presence. And I just want to thank you again for being here and sharing so powerfully and personally about your own experience in midlife. It's been a gift, and I know that listeners are going to take so much away from everything that you've offered.
Thank you. This conversation has been a gift for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Thank you for spending this time with me and for making space to ripen in your own way, in your own time. If something landed with you today, trust that it matters. And if you'd like to take what you've heard here even deeper, I offer individual coaching and small group programs for midlife women reclaiming their rhythms and desires. You can learn more at brookhofsiscoaching.com or join my email series, The Second Bite. And if this episode spoke to you, I would be so grateful if you'd leave a glowing review or share it with someone ripening alongside you. Until next time, tend your heart and take the second bite.